Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas-The Podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing. Your host, Gary Scheiner, and today we're going to be discussing the how and why of MDI. And those who don't know, MDI stands for multiple daily injections or inhalations. I guess the I can stand for multiple things. But before we jump in, make sure that you like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app so that you never miss an episode. And for expert diabetes support beyond this podcast, please visit integrateddiabetes.com. So now we're ready to get started. I am thrilled to be joined today by two friends and colleagues, Miss Ginger Vieira and Dr. Egils Bogdanovics. Want to give each of you a chance to say a little bit about yourselves. And Ginger, why don't you go first?
Hello, Gary. Thank you for having me. I have lived with type 1 for 25 years. I've been creating videos, articles, and books on type 1 for about 20 years. Please forgive the earlier ones. I was 20. But I am a huge fan. Well, fan's putting it lightly, but I'm a big fan of MDI, but more because I'm not a fan of insulin pumps, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little later. But you can find my books on Amazon on exercise, pregnancy, burnout, low blood sugars, and find me at diabetesnerd.com.
You co-authored one of those books with one of our team members, Jenny.
And we have a second edition coming out hopefully next month. New and improved. It's 10 years. 10 years. A lot's changed since we published that book 10 years ago.
There has. And I remember when I first met you, you were a fairly accomplished power lifter.
I was definitely having fun powerlifting. I fell into that by accident, and because I was just trying to take better care of my own health, I started lifting weights, and then it turned out I was really good at it, and I got really strong really quickly, and that really is what led me into learning diabetes science on my own, because there was so little. He's got something back there.
Now, I was going through some old
archive
magazines and things in my office. So we used to have an organization called the Diabetes Exercise and Sports Association. And I was proud to edit our journal called The Challenge. Find that edition. There is... Anyway, while I'm looking for that, Egils, tell us a little about
this. Sure. Egils Bogdanovics. I've had diabetes for about 42 years, and this is Plan B. I started after school going through officer candidate school, and I wanted to fly fighter planes. And literally a month before Pensacola, I lost 30 pounds in a couple of weeks. I was diagnosed with type 1. Plan B was to become an endocrinologist, and that's what I do now. And been doing this for a number of years and loving seeing type 1s. I learn something from every single one that I see. And just like Ginger, I am big MDI. As long as you're using CGM, I'm a big MDI proponent. Although, in all honesty, I've tried everything. Usually it's like a pump that says not for human use that I get off the reps, but I do have tried everything.
Okay. I found the
oh geez, how funny.
Raising the Bar with Ginger Vieira.
Man, yeah, that is 20 years ago. I was having fun.
Actually, you look younger now.
Well, I'm a lot slimmer. There's no better weight loss plan than not powerlifting anymore. I lost 30 pounds in like 1 year, not even doing anything but walking my dog.
Okay. So I think a good first thing to ask you both about, I'm a big advocate of pump therapy for a multitude of reasons. Why? You're obviously intelligent people. You have access to a lot of resources, the latest, the greatest. Why did you opt to go the MDI route? Ginger, tell us.
I really love that started with your obviously intelligent people. I'm going to start mine next time I see you in real life, Gary. I'm going to start our conversation with that. I used a pump for maybe 5, 7 years, something like that. I loved it for a little while, and it really started to break my trust, and I started to really hate what it does to my skin and really hate pump site failures and having it attached to me. I did try again many years later in my late 20s for pregnancy. I put on an Omnipod. And I remember my husband being like, wow, you really like this? And within about 3.5 weeks, I was like, I am ripping this thing off. There's no way. And it's no offense to Omnipod. It could have been any pump. And I would have felt the same way. And he was like, yeah, that seemed too good to be true that you were really going to stick with this. And yeah, I've been MDI ever since. If I think about it right now, having a pump attached to me all the time, it's like claustrophobia for me.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of that robot feeling also whenever I'm pumping insulin. I as I mentioned earlier, CGM for everybody. I've always been a CGM first, even if you're going to be pumping. But really, it comes down to simplicity. It's I can go out with a pen in my bike, kit and ride for 5 hours and not worry about anything. Not worrying about a sight loss or a kink or whatever it might be. And as far that's personally. As far as professionally, I have no opposition to having patients on pumps. In fact, I encourage them if they want to use it. But I've never had a call at 2 a.m. saying my pen broke. And so once you inject, it's in there. You're not worried about air bubbles. You're not worried about a kink catheter. You're not worried about any of that stuff.
You just cursed yourself. You were going to get a call tonight.
Well, can I tell you, I think this podcast actually cursed me because I am not sure if I took my Lantus last night, and I was high when I woke up, but it corrected so easily that I thought, and I don't think I've ever forgotten to take my Lantus injection in 25 years. And so I think you cursed me, Gary. And then I hung steady this morning. So I thought, okay, I must have taken it. And then I ate my apple and peanut butter. I took my insulin. I spiked so quickly that I'm thinking, okay, maybe I didn't take it, but I would think I'd have ketones by now and be 300.
My Ginger Voodoo doll worked perfectly then.
Yeah. So the timing of this is hilarious. And then I took a little bit of Lantus right before this, and I could have just created a whole disaster. That's never happened to me in 25 years, though.
So you take half the dose the next morning if you forgot it. Hedge your bets.
That's what I took was half the dose. But we'll see.
And you're always going to have some basal on board there. It's not like you're pumping insulin and you just lost it, and 3 hours later your beta hydroxybutyrate is through the roof already.
Yeah, it's still lingering. I know, but then it's also Lantus, right? So it already has a shorter lifespan than like Tresiba. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I forgot. But thank you for that encouragement that I won't die later today.
So everybody with type 1 needs a basal bolus type of a regimen. The basal insulin can be administered in a lot of different ways. On a pump, we have the ability to adjust the basal by time of day. It's not as easy to do that on injection therapy. So, Ginger, why did you choose Lantus as your basal? Or was that
I've tried the other ones. I've tried the other ones, and I liked them at first. And then like Tresiba just became wild for me after the first month. It was so unpredictable. Lantus is the most steady for me, and I know exactly when it peaks. I know that 3 a.m. is that tricky time for me. I actually have a little quirky thing I do now where I take 20% of my dose at 2:30 in the afternoon, and it helps me cover the evening where I was having some really stubborn highs, which someone told me they had the same thing happen during perimenopause. I have no research to back that up, but it was really weird starting only a few months ago. And then that allowed me to only be taking 80% of my dose before bed, which eliminates for me that 3 to 5 a.m. risk of lows when Lantus is peaking, 5 hours-ish post-injection. And so I know with Lantus and how I compensate for not being able to tweak basal is I know between 8:30 and 9:30, if I was on a pump, I'd need a little basal boost. I'm not getting that. So I take a little, I fast, I practice intermittent fasting. And I know that triggers for me a release of liver glucose around 8:30. So I take a tiny bolus around then.
So the names of the insulins you mentioned, we have a lot of international listeners to our podcast. Glargine is sort of the generic name for Galantis. And the other two options are Detamir and Degludec. Degludec is the most long-acting of the long-acting basal injectable insulins. And Detamir, believe that's Levemir, that's Novo's product. Are they discontinuing it, or have
they're
they
not making that anymore? They're not making that anymore. Yeah.
That was
Wasn't
like
as much of a
water
market.
for me. Levemir was like saline for me. It did almost nothing.
Interesting.
Maybe you forgot to take it.
Yeah.
I was on it for about 2 weeks. I actually fired my healthcare team over it. This was like 15 years ago. They didn't believe me that it wasn't working. And I was like, please put me back on Lantus. And they fired me because I was telling them how to do their job, I guess.
So Egils, I see patients quite a bit who are on MDI and experience a significant dawn effect where their glucose rises in the early morning hours. And then with kids, we often see that rise in the evening when they're making growth hormone. So what are some of the ways you can work around that?
There's no doubt about it. I was going to say the one time when you really, really need a pump and MDI is not going to do it is to compensate for dawn phenomenon. And, you could say, well, I'm going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I have some patients that I take Tresiba as a basal, and I like it because if I miss my morning dose, I could take it at nighttime that night and go back to morning the next day. And it's like keeping a bicycle wheel spinning. It's pretty smooth. But I have patients that aren't just even take a little bit of Lantus at bedtime, sort of a funny combination to compensate for that dawn phenomenon. But the thing about dawn is it's not the same every day. So you really need an automated insulin delivery device to compensate for that.
We've actually had some success using NPH at bedtime. I know it's kind of like taboo, get away.
No.
But
in general, with insulin therapy, if you understand the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of a particular insulin, you can use anything. I used to use NPH and regular 3 times a day, a reverse mix, 70% regular, 30% NPH. So even though NPH varies from day to day, like a ton, if you just got small doses a few times a day, you almost overlapping, have a nice basal. So, you can make it work as long as you are a smart diabetic.
You know what I take to not deal with dawn phenomenon anymore? I take metformin right before bed. And it has eliminated my dawn phenomenon problems at 5 a.m.
So it's blunting your liver's output of glucose in those early morning hours.
It's been awesome because I exercised first thing in the morning and it was very tedious because dawn phenomenon isn't exactly the same impact every morning, right? So I would try to get ahead of it and prevent it. And so I was playing this guessing game on top of cardio exercise, and metformin has completely eliminated that for me.
The other half of the MDI is the bolus, the insulin to cover meals and to correct highs. And with a pump, we do it by touching some buttons. On MDI, again, the I can stand for injection or inhalation. So what are your preferred methods for bolusing?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm talking too much.
So I will bolus, pretty much, Novolog, Fias, Humalog, Lumjev. Everybody makes a big deal about, this is faster. You got a few minutes here, a few minutes there. To me, they're all the same. It's just a matter of taking it early enough. But I also like to, and you've alluded to inhaled. I love using, a hit of inhaled insulin to really correct those highs, because I see those arrows going down pretty rapidly. And, it's, again, it's not the plane, it's the pilot. I think that, if you bolus early enough and pay attention to the trend arrows on your CGM and pay attention to what you're about to be doing, the bolus, with MDI can be as good as it is with AID.
And Ginger, you have experience with the Frezza.
I'm a huge fan of a Frezza, but I just got a question about this on Instagram this morning saying how much, because I posted a photo of this really yummy gluten-free pizza I had last night. Oh, Gary, all right. And someone messaged me and said, well, how much do you take, how much inhaled insulin do you take for that? And I was like, I would never rely just on inhaled insulin to cover pizza. It's strong for a big like punch, right? But pizza requires like a flood or something.
Yeah, you'd have to triple dose over time.
Oh,
with
I
the
mean,
Frezza.
Yeah, but you
I
could
just
take it
got-
every hour. I mean, it would work if you took it every hour.
That's really tedious though, and would be like trying to run with a train or something. So I do a combination for a lot of my meals, unless it's pretty simple, of Novolog and inhaled insulin. And I love inhaled insulin. It's definitely a game changer, even though I still also use Novolog, but it just gives me more flexibility and fewer injections for sure.
Yeah, even though I'm on a pump, I use a Frezza every Sunday morning before I play basketball. Because if I dose for breakfast with normal rapid or ultra rapid,
Exactly.
it's going to make me crash while I'm playing ball. The
Yeah.
Frezza's in and out so quickly, I don't have to worry about it.
That's one of my favorite things about it is I spend a lot less time on dog walks. I walk my dogs several times a day, and I spend a lot less time preventing lows from meal boluses on board because of a Frezza.
The great thing about a Frezza is it almost doesn't matter how much you take because it's going to be gone. You know, you got an hour, hour and a half later, you're back to normal. So it's a lot less detail requiring than sub-Q. But I agree. I do the same thing. I do both at the same time.
How do you guys calculate your doses?
You don't have to. That's what's so great about it. I was just going to say, you don't have to meticulously carb count with a Frezza. It's more, I think they did it themselves a real disservice by putting a number on these things, because everybody wants to know how that translates to Novolog or Humalog, right? And it doesn't. It doesn't translate. And like they say that a 4 is technically 2.5 units of injectable insulin. Now, I would take a 4 for a relatively very low carb salad. I would never take 2.5 units of Novolog for a low carb salad. It doesn't translate. So instead, I think of them as small, medium, and large.
Blue is snack, green is sandwich, and yellow is pizza.
Yellow is kabam, right?
Pasta, big potato.
Yeah.
Plus,
if you're doing it,
Gary, devil's advocate, Gary, you're using a Frezza, and I assume you're on an automated insulin delivery device. I mean, every time you use a Frezza, you're sort of screwing up your pump's brain. You ever think about that?
I turn off the automated part for a little while.
All right. Okay.
I know a few people on AIP systems that use it for correcting highs.
Kill the brain for a few hours so it doesn't mess things up.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. The new connected pens are another popular option for people on MDI because it offers some features of pump therapy along with the convenience and the ease of the injection. Either of you have experience using a connected pen?
Yeah. Well, I personally use both the InPen and the Tempo. And I agree. I mean, if you think about it, 1% of insulin users in the planet are in a pump, and the rest 99% aren't. So, we should, or they should, have the option of having all those advantages of pumping, and you're getting about as close as you can. You forget. I often, like Ginger, forget if I took my insulin or not. And if I look down on my Tempo and I see that I just took insulin 10 minutes ago, then it confirms that I did take my insulin. Whereas if I'm not using it, I don't know.
A word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program. Yeah. So we were talking about the pens and the connected pens, but Ginger, have you used a connected pen?
I haven't because I don't like using pen needles. I don't tell anybody, Gary, but I stick a
Problem do
syringe.
you have with
I
pen
know.
needles?
I think I'm just an old lady. I'm like, I resisted CDs. I was like, no way, I'm listening to tapes forever. So that's my problem, really, at the core.
Fleetwood Mac and Foghat
It was
cassettes.
a Rocky 3 soundtrack I had that I had a tiger. I wrote down all the lyrics by hand while listening. So anyway, I don't like pen needles. They leak and I don't trust them and I don't like having to prime them. It's all about trust for me or a lack thereof with all the
I
tapes.
hear you about the leaking. Because the drops that come out after the needle's removed, you
I
always
don't like
wonder how
that
much
and
you
I don't like
lost.
priming it. That's a waste. And so um,
Yours is held together with a rubber band. You got your syringe and your pen. I
pretty
love the rubber band. Years ago, the meter companies were all looking for ways to make an all-in-one meter with the Lancet, the strips, the meter, and they ended up with these big bulky devices. I came up with my own idea using a rubber band just to link it all together. So I was thinking I'd market this. I'll sell these all-in-one meter adapters for $19.99. And if you
brilliant.
order today, I'll give you an extra one for no extra charge. Just pay the additional shipping.
Shipping fee, yeah. Or get it off your cauliflower when you get it in the refrigerator in the at the store. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Ginger, I saw that you have your pen without the cap on it. Why?
Yeah, I toss that as soon as I open it.
Why? Why? I mean, I know some people, they come in and they have the big cap on it and you can't fit it on there. So if you just have the little needle with the little cap on it, this still fits.
That would disrupt my rubber band system, though, doctor.
But you can still put the band around here, and you only
It
need
adds
one
bulk.
needle for the whole pen. I mean, I go through one needle for the whole pen, unless you get a tissue clot. At that point, you just
That's
change it.
interesting to hear from a doctor, not changing that pen.
Again, I do as I say, not as I do.
I appreciate you acknowledging that, though, and being
absolutely.
honest about it. I do change my syringe, hopefully once a day, or when it starts to hurt, I guess.
Yeah, I've always taught people change the needle daily, the
Yeah.
pen needle. How many days does a pen needle last you, Egils?
Well, I say that I use it for the whole pen, but it never lasts the whole pen. I'd say, somewhere around a week. And once in a while, patients will call. They say, my pen doesn't work. I said, it works. Change the needle. And they call back and they said, yes, it works. I mean, I collect old diabetes stuff. I have a little museum of diabetes. And in the old days, they had the glass syringe, of course, the metal needle, you boiled both. And they had this little thing called a reamer, where after each injection, it was like a little paperclip, tiny. You put it through the needle part of it to actually get that skin clot out of it. Because otherwise, even though you boil it, it would still clog it up.
My Yale syringe came with a little sharpening rock.
Oh, yeah. Sharpening stone. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I've got a lot of those if you guys want to go old school and you really want to go back.
Really old school. Ginger, this might be for you since you don't like
No, I like to start around 1999. That's my old school.
Yeah. Well, the smart pens, like the InPen, they'll do dose calculations, they'll adjust insulin on board, and they'll document the doses that are taken by, there's a Bluetooth communication. So it has a lot of the benefits of pump therapy without having to use a pump.
Absolutely. And the
I
reports.
think that technology, the reports, I think that technology is so valuable for people who need the support and the further education, right? Like both of you, I love to study the heck out of my insulin doses. I'm not going to let a device tell me how much to take, but a large majority of people will learn and get a lot of support from that. Should I use one? Yes.
So I've been making a list of what all the potential advantages are to being on MDI as opposed to pump therapy. So let me run this list by you. You can tell me what I missed.
It's the same list as all the disadvantages of pump therapy.
We'll get to those next. But the advantages, so convenience, and Egils, you emphasize this, just the convenience, just quick, you carry it, it's portable, it's easy. Cost, there's also an enormous difference.
Way more affordable.
Yeah. From an insurance standpoint, if you get coverage for your pump and supplies, you might still have deductibles to meet and co-pays, et cetera.
That's actually a big part of what continued my MDI therapy in my early 20s is because I did not have health insurance for about 4 years. And there's no way I could have right? Maintained a pump at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used
Even
to take I used to take chem strips and cut them into quarters, without
quarters.
insurance. Yeah.
Wow.
But MPH was like $13 a bottle back then. So
You that good with a scissor, or did you use a scalpel?
Well, you could tell if it was like less than 40 or over 400. Everything in between was about the same color.
It's all kind of a mauvish blue.
Yeah.
Simplicity is another thing. Pump therapy is, it's much more complex. You got to learn programming and site changes and all that good stuff. Injections are just that, or inhalations are a lot simpler. The portability, it's easier. It's probably less stuff you have to lug with you when you travel.
Yeah.
The absence of adhesives, and Ginger, you pointed this out as this was an issue for you when you were on a pump. You got to use some kind of adhesive to either keep the pump or the infusion set in place. And you don't need that when you're on an MDI plan. And then the fewer technical issues. There is the potential if you take your needle out too soon, it's still dripping, but otherwise, you don't really have technical issues with pumps and pens, whereas with syringes and pens. But with pumps, you can have all kinds of technical issues that arise. And we've known for years that the DKA risk is lower for people on injections because, like you said, Egils, once you inject the long-acting insulin, even if you forget it the next day, you still have a trace of it working for quite some time. So it offers some protection against ketosis and ketoacidosis. So now, anything I missed? Anything else about MDI?
Yeah. That cannula pushing fluid into your body 24/7, the skin damage beyond the adhesive, right? Just the cannula sitting there. I could not stand it. It would get I have really sensitive skin. I have a diagnosed, I have the driest skin in the land kind of diagnosis. I don't even know the name of the skin type, but that's really what it means. And I just can't handle it. It's so itchy all the time for me. And just the damage it does is brutal.
Yeah, so lipodystrophy is another potential problem we see with pump use if the sites are not rotated properly. But the same thing can happen on injections. It's not really
sitting there for days pushing fluid.
That's just in your head. That's in your brain, Ginger.
I guess so.
That's typically not causing damage unless it kinks. Kinking can cause damage.
All right. I think it's so yucky.
Yeah. I mean, lipohypertrophy is a huge, it's not, as you mentioned, it's not just pumps, it's injections. I mean, I've got people coming in, after years, I finally look at their belly and I see that there's a softball to the left of the umbilicus. And it's like, oh no. Yeah. And because it doesn't hurt to inject there. So you just keep going back to the same. And
the absorption is terrible at that point, right?
Terrible.
Yeah. I call it the candy machine effect when that happens because you give insulin, it doesn't absorb right away. You go high and you give more insulin, and then all of it kicks in at once. It's like that candy machine where the wheel turns, but your candy doesn't quite fall. So you hit the machine and
it gets in
delayed. It's delayed,
yeah.
And sometimes by the time the old insulin absorbs, it's not at full strength anymore.
Okay. Yeah. And that's actually a big part of getting insurance approval for inhaled insulin is you have to tell your doctor to put in your notes that you have lipotrophy. Okay. It's critical.
Any other advantages of MDI that I missed?
Flexibility around exercise. Once you figure out your AID system for exercise, but I find it way simpler to exercise without a pump.
So now I'm going to throw at you all the reasons I prefer pump therapy and see how you would counter these with your MDI. The frequency of injections and inhalations.
Hell, look at the frequency of site changes. That's the first thing that happens when I put, Omnipod or T:slim, I've used both of them. 3 days later, it's like, didn't I just do this? It seems like 2 minutes ago I changed my pod, and now it's three days again. So,
and the tech failures, right? It's like, even if you don't make it 3 days, I feel like my pumping friends just are always having technical issues, right?
Well, but you can't deny, even if you're having to change every 48 hours, the number of needle sticks with MDI it's much, much more than that.
And even if you and sort of, to make the argument for pumping insulin, if you're correcting highs with what I recently used, an Omnipod, I might do that 11 times a day. Use CGM. I'm not going to take out my pen and take 1 unit. I'm not going to take out my pen and take 2 units, 11 times a day to correct those highs. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, yes, we are pin cushions, and acknowledging that, I think that pump will give you better control with frequent correction.
I mean, also, I would argue personality type, though. Like I did MDI through pregnancies, and I still maintain that A1C below 6 without a pump. And I will, it takes me a month to go through a pen, right? You said it takes you a week. So just the difference in insulin, because I'm 5'2" woman, you're a man. I will take out and take an injection of a 1/4 unit that I micromanage from this for the syringe. Another reason why I like using syringes is I can pull back just a smidge. It's not even.
That actually was my next item, was dosing precision on a pump. I can give a 20th of a unit.
Yeah.
I can give 0.35, 4.1.
I can on this too. I just don't quite know if it's 0.35 or if it's.
We're going to get a molecular scale and see how much you're actually.
I have figured out that if I pull it back where it actually looks like there's nothing in it, that for me is like.
Almost nothing equals 1/4.
Yeah.
It's not like John Madden with 1 knee equals 2 feet. You got all these translations you use.
I do it all the time. If I
but
was
you got to admit,
blood sugar in the 200 right before exercising, I would take what is basically a drop, doing exactly that.
For young kids and anyone who's really sensitive to small doses, you can't beat a pump.
Years ago, they showed that moms could draw up 1 unit accurately for their kids.
Ginger's a mom. Yeah. With a pump, we have the opportunity to sync with an automated insulin delivery algorithm. It'll raise and lower the delivery if glucoses are trending out of range. We don't have that capability with MDI. How do you counter that?
I don't trust any CGM technology to be accurate enough to be dosing my insulin.
I believe CGM's good enough for AID and good enough for using it in a non-adjunctive fashion in MDI. I mean, it sort of as far as advantage of pump, we alluded to using CGM, right? And for years I was telling patients that it doesn't matter how you get your insulin as long as you use a CGM. In fact, there was a study, the Commissaire, where injection with CGM or pump with CGM was a lot better than injection with finger stick and pump with finger stick.
Yeah, but the AID folks.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I was showing pictures of this to patients and to docs, saying it doesn't matter how you get your insulin as long as you're using a CGM. And then 6 years into that study, they changed the protocol to use AID, and all of a sudden the AID went boom, right down. So that whole argument is shot now. You're going to do a lot better with AID and CGM than injection.
Ginger, your opinion is shared by a lot of people.
Yeah, but I think it comes down to the same thing I mentioned earlier, is that there's a larger majority of people who do need AID to reach their targets, and it's like a invaluable thing for those people. And
what it allows, though,
that likes to micromanage everything.
They can reach that target with less micromanagement.
No, that's what I mean. Is it's necessary for a lot
of people. With a pump, since I have such a healthy diet and I'm eating junk all the time,
that's what I've heard.
I have the ability to extend my bolus delivery so that I don't drop after the meal and then rise a few hours later. How do you deal with that on injections?
Oh, no problem. I spread out my doses.
Yeah, that'll work.
Take multiple doses over time.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll work, but it's work.
It's more work, right? It's a trade-off. People ask me all the time why I'm not on a pump. It's a trade-off of what kind of work and tedious things you want to deal with. I don't want to deal with the cost and the tech failures and the site stuff and all of that versus, sure, I'll take too much.
Social stigma. There's a lot of people who are hesitant to give themselves insulin around other people because of just the way it looks, the social stigma associated with taking shots.
Those people
How do you
can go
address that?
somewhere else.
I tell patients just it might be a teaching moment for everybody else. Go
Yeah.
ahead and do it. I tell them to inject through their pants if they'd like, and it's been shown it doesn't increase infection rate. Or pull up their shirt a little bit to go into the belly, or in the summer you go into the triceps region. But if somebody wants you to go to the bathroom and sit in a stall and take insulin that way, tell them take a hike and be happy you're not taking insulin.
Yeah.
Punch them in the face and then
that'll work though. I'll bail you out, Gary.
The vast majority of MDI folks are taking injections, not inhalations, and they do need to figure out doses for corrections and carbs and whatnot. My pump does those calculations for me automatically, and it's only a suggestion. I mean, I can adjust it if I want, but I like the calculation and the insulin on board adjustment. So how do people on MDI deal with that?
Well, you use one of those smart pens then if you really, really want to know what your insulin on board is influencing your bolus. And, for patients that are stacking on a regular basis, taking these rage boluses because they can't wait for a couple of hours, it's probably a pretty good idea to use an app.
And to get inhaled insulin so that you don't feel the urge to rage.
The basal, we talked a little bit about, but I consider the variable basal delivery to be a key benefit of pump therapy, even without automated adjustment. Being able to program in lower basal in the middle of the day for people who need less, and higher in the early morning or the evening when they need more. On injections, there's some creative things we can do. Most people are just taking that flat basal rate 24. We talked about that already, so I don't think we need to get into it much.
I mean, I have a little note on that, is that you compensate in other ways. So I believe, I try to get my basal dose as low as I can so that I'm never dropping during a fasted dog walk. That's kind of my gauge for I have too much basal. And again, because I'm petite, 1 unit too much is the make or break for me. So there's times of the month where I go up 10% or down 10% in my dose based on.
In your case, though, when you adjust your basal, it's 24 hours of adjustment for a dog walk. On a pump, we can make.
It's not for the dog walk. The dog walk is just the indicator to me that I have a little too much basal on board. So, but then when I say you have to compensate in other ways, if I'm going down to my lower dose of 9 units a day, I know I might need a little bit more insulin with some of my meals, or a little bit more insulin, and I mean the smidge on my little syringe, versus if I go up, I'm going to need a little less. So I'm compensating for the lack of flexibility in my boluses.
Yeah, my approach to adjusting that basal is my bedtime and my morning. If I'm dropping from bedtime to morning excessively, pick a number, 30, 50, whatever it might be, then I want to, drop back on my basal. And I agree, Ginger. If I like to use, people used to say 70% basal, 30% bolus. I like to use about 60, 70% bolus, and a smaller amount of basal.
As little as.
The pumps let us make temporary adjustments to the basal for things like sports and exercise, lack of activity, illness. If you adjust the basal on injections, you're making a 24-hour plus change in your basal delivery and not just a few hours. So how do you deal with?
I have a whole book that teaches how to do it on MDI, and there's notes in there on pumps too. But
convenient that you had that ready.
Hey, there's a shelf back there. It's just where it lives, okay? But it's so doable. You just have to first get your basal insulin dose fine-tuned. So again, that it's low enough that you're not dropping during fasted exercise. If you're dropping during fasted exercise, I believe you have too much basal on board. And then, like I said, you compensate with boluses. Now, if I was going to eat a meal and then exercise, I need to obviously adjust the meal bolus just like I would if I was on a pump as well. And you don't have to monkey with the long-acting dose once you've got it fine-tuned properly.
Do you have any patients who use both a pump and MDI, who alternate?
Yeah, you're looking at one. Yeah, yeah, it's every couple of months, having said that, there's no doubt about it. I do better when I'm on AID, even though I do really, really, really well on MDI because I believe it or not, I think like a pancreas, Gary. It's if I'm going up, if I even see a trend arrow going up, I'll hit it. Exercise, yeah, that's one thing. My church is going for a five-hour bike ride. I think that I could never figure out exactly what to do as far as insulin, Ginger. But even people without diabetes need to fuel. So my rule is 25 grams of carbs every 30 minutes. So I go through a pile of gel to the ride, but it would be easier with a pump. But again, I'm going to have a backpack full of pump gear supplies if I'm going to do that.
Yeah, endurance exercise, a pump becomes a big game changer for sure. It's harder on MDI.
Yeah, we have quite a few patients who will alternate between pump and they'll go on injections. Let's say if they're at the beach for the weekend or doing some kind of adventure outing where the cons of pump therapy just outweigh the pros. Being able to transition back and forth is great, and a lot of people don't realize that you can do that. As soon as you wake up, you can just give yourself an injection of your long-acting insulin, stop using the pump, and do boluses at meal times. There's also an option called an untethered plan where you can combine pump and injection on the same day, where you get enough basal to meet you inject enough basal to meet your lowest basal need, and then you wear the pump perhaps at night while you need more basal, and then you can connect to the pump for bolusing purposes. But you can be disconnected from the pump all day on a plan like that. So I guess it's safe to say MDI, whether it's with a Afrezza or injected insulin, pump therapy, AID, automated systems, these are all tools at our disposal. And everyone is going to have their own unique advantages and disadvantages associated with these different tools. And it's in everyone's best interest to learn how they can benefit from these. If your healthcare team isn't teaching you about them or sharing information about them, seek it out on your own. Because clearly different systems work best for different people. I'm a big fan of pump therapy and the AID systems. I think work great, but they're not advantageous for everybody. Some people do better on MDI for a variety of reasons, and I encourage them to do that if that's going to meet their needs the best. Either of you have like a closing summary statement?
You just used people like 5 times, and that's the key. People with diabetes are people, and there's an amount of technology for everybody, and what works for one person may not work for the other. But as far as last words, I tell my patients now. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I tell them, take care of those kidneys, take care of those eyes, because we're going to have a cure in your lifetime.
I echo the same. I do a lot of writing about cure research for a few places, and I feel very hopeful about the same thing. It's definitely, I will say, so I have jokingly, but I'm not joking, said that I'll sign up for an insulin pump when it is implantable, and I'm actually getting the implantable Eversense next month. I just got insurance approval, had to fight for it for a couple months, but I'm excited about that.
It has interoperability designation now, so we may see it in an AID system before too long.
Yeah, I hope.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining in today. I hope I didn't insult you or lose your friendships over this. Now, I respect believe me, I respect what you're doing. You got good reasons behind what you do, and I respect that. So thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being. We've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Scheiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.